this is a continuation of an SQL teaching series. In the last video, I showed you how you could create a table in a database using the terminal or importing a file using the terminal. In this video, we're going to be inserting data into a database. We're going to be creating a fictitious blog, and so we need a table and a database that stores blog information. So let's go ahead and open our database. So let's work on the back end first. So first we need a database and a table. So I am going to quickly turn off my refresh option, or just comment it out. So I just commented out my refresh, and I have this CRUD file that I used to create another tutorial, and so I'm going to be using the same file. So first I'm going to delete the comments right here, and we're going to say first we're going to create a new database. So create database, and we're going to call this, I'm going to call this blog simu for simulation, or blog simulation. Alright, so I have blog simulation, and then we're going to use the database blog simulation to create a table called blog post, and we're going to leave this line so that each blog post has a unique ID, and then we want a title field, a date, I'm going to call this pub date, and date time with the default value of current timestamp, and then we need a field for the author, and I'm going to make this varchar 255. And then the last field that we need is going to be the post, and this is going to be data type text. Okay, so look at the SQL, double check to make sure everything looks correct. So I have the XAMPP terminal open. I'm going to create a database. I'm going to use that database. Then I'm going to create a table with a field ID, UID, a field name title, a field name pub date, a field name author, and a field name post. Now, as long as I did not miss anything, everything should work out. So let's see if I typed everything incorrectly. So first, you want to start the driver, and the user is going to be root for me. Alright, we are in, and now I'm just going to type source, and then I'm going to paste in the path that I have copied, which is that, and hit enter. Alright, no errors, so everything is fine. So now we can double check. So let's say show tables. Alright, so there's our table. The database was created, the table, and then make sure all the fields look good. So I'm going to type describe blog post. Alright, so all the fields look good. I have UID, title, current timestamp, author, and okay, so everything in our database is set up correctly, and now we are going to insert data on the back end, and then I'm going to show you how to use your form on your website to insert data. Now, if you watch my other SQL tutorial, you know that you could type all of these commands in the command line if you want, but I like to write it in here first because it's easier for you as a student to see the code in this ID environment. So that's why I write the code in a file and then I import the code rather than type it in the terminal. But you could just as easily type it in like create database or create table if you want. You can do that here. So I'm going to comment this out. I could delete it, but it just makes it easier if I want to use this code again. So we're going to insert a new record. So insert into this table right here, and we're going to put actually all of this, but let's just type it out. So we're going to put the UID, all of these fields right here. UID, title, pub date, author, post. UID, title, pub date, author, and post. And then we have values, and the values, you don't put this value in because that's automatically set, but you need a title. So let's see, let me call this SQL CRUD how to insert record with form. Alright, so that's a good title. The date is automated, so let's remove that, and we're also going to remove the UID because that's automated too. So we're inserting the title, and then the author, Vicky, Labdi, Jim, and then the post, and I'm just going to go copy that lorem text. Sorry, here we go. Alright, so I'm going to copy all of this and paste it here. Alright, so this is me entering it from the terminal, which of course you wouldn't really enter a blog post from a terminal, but I just want to show you how all of this works on the back end before we bring it to an actual project. So rather than import this file, this time I'm just going to select all of this, copy it, and paste it here, and hit enter. Alright, so as long as there's no errors, we should have a new post, and I'm going to type select. I'm not going to do select all. I'm not going to do the wildcard because then it will print out all of this, and I don't want that. So let's just select title from blog post. Alright, so we have this title. So to see more than the title, you just add that. So let's say I want to see the title and the author name and the pub date and the unique ID. So select title, author name, pub date, UID from blog post. Author name. Let's see what field. What was the field name? Alright, so it's just author. So just there we go. Alright, so now we see the title, the author, the pub date, and the unique ID. So I'm going to copy this code right here and paste it here. And that's just for future use in displaying the data. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. Okay, so we have our first record. And let's delete all of this. Alright, so I'm deleting this so you can see the code more clearly. So we're going to use this code inside of this file right here. So since this is the second tutorial on SQL incorporated with PHP, I already have a file that connects to the database. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to create a folder, and we're going to call this inc for include. And in this folder is going to be, we're going to call this config.php. And what we're going to do is take all of this code right here that is used to connect to the database right here, and we're going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to remove it from this file and instead use require once include config. Okay, so if you did not watch my other tutorial, I'm going to briefly go over this. We're using a localhost, the root user which has no password, and the database that we're using is this right here. Well, we're going to use it here. This create file is no longer needed, so it was using a different database, but that's fine because that was for a different tutorial. But we're going to copy this right here and put it at the top of this page right here. And I'm going to copy this. So in this config file, those are the settings that we need. This we're going to use when we instantiate the PDO. And these are the options that I use for my PDO. The default options which can be overridden in a script if you want to override them. But these are the default settings that I always use. So with the config file done, I'm going to paste in the code that I copied, and then I'm going to explain it real quick. So this first line is if server request method is post, then you connect to the database, or you try to, and then if you connect to the database, then you try to complete a set of commands. So if a form sends the request, then you try to connect to the database, and if you connect to the database, then you execute a set of commands. So let's create a file called insert. And in this file, we're going to move this code right here. Actually, all of this code, we're going to move it here. And the commands that we're going to execute are right here. So I still have it highlighted, but it's the same commands that you use to insert from here. So we're going to put those commands into a statement. So you could say, you call this SQL, you could call it a statement, SQL statement, whatever you want to call it. You're going to put that code in there. And you don't put the semicolon at the end, you put it here. And you check the code, insert into blog post, title, author, post. And for the values, there are 3 values, see? And we're going to replace that with a placeholder, a question mark placeholder. And you can put this on one line. So you have insert into blog post, title, author, post, and the values are replaced with question marks, placeholders. So we need a form, and I have this file called form. So I'm going to use this file, and where the action is, we want it to go to this file right here, the insert file. And the method needs to be post. Now you can style this if you want, you don't have to. I want to do a tad bit of styling, but not much. So I'm going to grab this meta fresh so I can see the changes. I can see the changes happen. So let's go. So I like to set my input to have a border radius. I also like to add padding, and I like to style the button. I give that a border radius. I like to give that padding give it a border of 0 and set the color to white. And when you hover, I want the background color to change just a tad. And then lastly, we want the cursor to be a pointer. Alright, so where I have this border 0, I'll change this to say 1 pixel solid, and I want it to be this color right here. Alright, so now it's time to add the input fields. So first we need a title. Input type is text. Name of this field is title, and give it a line break. And the next, and copy this. The next field is author, and then we have one more field, which is the text area. And this is post, and on the button, I'm gonna put public. Alright, so I'm gonna do something here. I'm gonna remove these line breaks. Instead, I'm going to edit here, input in text area, and say display block, and I'm going to move this. So I want the input in the text area to display block with a border radius of 7 pixels and margin bottom of 15 pixels. And then I'm going to set the width to 100%. And there's one more thing I want to do is I'm going to create a style sheet. And I'm going to combine the code. So the code that I created here and the code that I created here, and then I'm going to delete this and replace it with a link to styles. And I'm going to do the same thing right here. And then I'm going to wrap this in a main div. Alright, call me picky, but the button looks funny to me. And I'm going to add some padding. Alright, so we got a simple form. No bells and whistles, just pure simplicity. We're ready to use this form to insert data into a database. So with that, I'm going to remove this or comment out this refresh. And so now this is how this happens. We want you to be able to enter your title, the name of the author in the post, and then insert the data into the database. So step 1, enter into the form. Step 2, enter data into the database. Step 3, return back to the form with a message. Okay, so let us go here and let's write this out. So step 1, you enter the information into the form. So we want to store form input into variable. Okay, so let's move that. Alright, so if the server's request method equals post, then we have procedures, and else we're going to say, oops, looks like you are lost. Alright, and the reason we do that is so that, first let's make sure, if you ever have an error and you don't know what the error is, and you're using Visual Studio Code, just push F8 and it'll tell you. Alright, so I forgot the semicolon. So let's go to the browser and visit this page so that you can see why we put this if statement and this message will pop up. So let's go insert.php. Alright, so as you can see, it's working fine. That means that the only way that you can access this page that contains the script for inserting data is if the information is received through a form on your website. So we need to store the information into variables. So we have the title, and then we have the author, and then we have the post. Alright, and this is coming from a form. So actually, we don't need these apostrophes, single quotes. I don't know when we started calling apostrophes single quotes, but so we have title, author, post, and whatever you named your fields here, I named mine title, author, and post. Just make sure that you put the same information here, the same name. So title, author, and post. And right here, alright, so you have the information stored in variables. Of course, this is optional. It just makes it easier to read the code. When you're scanning the code, it's just easier to use a variable as opposed to a global function, a global array. So we have our variables, and now we can enter the data into the database. So for we say if the server method is post, store the post data into variables, then connect to database, and we have the SQL statement right here. And now we instantiate the PDO. We already instantiated the PDO, but now we just need to execute the command. So we create a prepare statement. So our prepare statement equals create a variable. We use our PDO object to prepare this right here. Then after we prepare it, then we execute it. So statement, execute, and here's where we put the values, and they're right here. So we have title, author, and post. And the reason you're seeing those errors is because this is an array. Alright, so we have our prepare statement, then we execute our prepare statement. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start a session so we can store a message in the session. So let's start a session. So session start is the function that we're using. So we start a session and then we store a message in this global, and I'm going to call this success message, and it's going to be your article has been published. Alright, so in order to be able to use this session, global session global variable, we need to add this to the page that we're going to redirect to, and that will be this page right here. I'm going to go back to the form and start the session. So now we redirect back to the form page. So we use header function, header location, form, and don't forget this right here. I'm just copying this and go back to this form, and I'm going to insert the message right here. And it basically says if is set, then I'm going to echo the success message right here. So let's see, trying to make this so you can see. So if it's set, the session success message, then you're going to echo the message. And I created a class for this so that I could make it stand out, and I just want it to be a big size font. Well, it doesn't have to be big, but it does need to be bold, and the color is going to be red. Alright, so we have all the code that we need, and if we head back over here, we should be able to use our form now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this Latin text, and I'm going to paste all this in here, and publish. Alright, so here's our message. Your article has been published, and to double check that everything is working, we're going to go back here, and bam, this is the article that I just published. It has a unique ID and a published date. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to take the article, any article, and we want to show the data in a page. This, remember, is our template that we're going to use, and that is a separate video because this one is covering inserting data, video about editing, but this is inserting data, and in a different video we'll cover how to edit data, and this video is just about inserting. In the next video I'm going to show you how to display the information that's in your database into a website, and that's actually much more simpler than this, so it's going to be a very short video.